UFC Fight Night Cannonier versus Rodrigues is coming up next weekend, and today we are going to be breaking down the entire card with timestamps if you'd like to skip to any part of the video. Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I am your guy with too many YouTube channels. Guys, we're going to be breaking down the entire card. We're going to be breaking them down from the early prelims all the way to the main event. We're going to be talking about all of these fighters and breaking them down as much as we could possibly can, predicting the fights, taking a look at betting odds, if there's anything to mention, and also for all of these fights, not every single fight has betting odds out yet. I'm recording this early before you are actually watching this. This is going to be scheduled, but for the vast majority of them do have betting odds out right now. Regardless, we're going to be diving into these fights as deep as we can possibly get. Thank you very much for being here. Let's get started. Starting off with the first fight of the night, Gabriel Bonfim versus Khaos Williams, and this is a very, very sneaky good card for a fight night, guys. Gabriel Bonfim, wow, aura has been lost, eh? But anyway, so Gabriel Bonfim, he was 16-0. He was looking like the next big guy. And honestly, I was a big believer in both the Bonfim brothers. But then, of course, we ended up finding out with the Nicolas Dalby fight, he had a little bit of a cardio problem. Something that is very important to note is he did bounce back with another win against Angelusa. And in this fight, he had a decent performance. Angelusa is a very, very underrated fighter, in my opinion. But he was just more active, did what he needed to do to get the win. His cardio was better in this fight, but it still wasn't super good. Regardless, we still don't know if that Nicolas Dalby fight was a one-off performance or if it's time to actually take a look at Nicolas Dalby and go, okay, this dude is a lot better than everybody's giving him credit for. Regardless, Gabriel Bonfim is a well-rounded fighter who excels in boxing and BJJ. He has really great clinch work. Sometimes, though, he can get really hungry and he can jump guillotine. And usually when people jump guillotines in MMA, for some reason, the fighters at the top level have not learned yet that it rarely works, and Gabriel Bonfim is a guy who can get hungry searching for that guillotine. Khaos Williams, on the other hand, man, now that I'm thinking about it, both these guys had a little bit of their aura lost, eh? Anyways, Khaos Williams, not a ton to break down with Khaos Williams. He is a come forward, walk forward fighter who just wants to knock you out. He has really nice hands. He has really nice low kicks. Khaos Williams is a very easy fighter to break down, and he had a little bit of a bump in the road recently losing to Randy Brown, but I think that Randy Brown is a phenomenal fighter. There's no shame in losing to him, and it is also important to note he's been a very inconsistent fighter. I personally don't know why he's been taking so much time off. Anybody could shed some light on that, I would appreciate it. And then he won against Rolando Bedoya, and then Carlston Harris. He ended up he's been looking okay for these fights. Like, he ended up getting a finish in his last fight. Khaos Williams is still here. Khaos Williams is still in his prime. Khaos Williams is still a very, very capable fighter. In saying that, though, when these two actually end up matching up, I'm inclined to believe in Gabriel Bonfim just a little bit more. I have a hard time imagining Khaos Williams knocking him out, but if somebody is going to knock out Gabriel Bonfim, Khaos Williams is absolutely one of those guys that can do it. I like the different avenues and paths to victory that Gabriel Bonfim has. I feel like he will be able to take Khaos Williams down, and he would absolutely have the advantage there. But even then, if they end up getting close, like, I'm not so sure that Khaos Williams is going to be someone like, oh, Gabriel Bonfim better watch out. I still do believe Gabriel Bonfim is a very capable fighter, and I think that he's going to win this fight. So Gabriel Bonfim is going to be my official pick, and I'd like to see him win, to be honest with you guys. I miss the hype behind the Bonfim brothers. I'd like to see him get it back. Let's take a look at Odds Jam right now. Khaos Williams sitting at the average odds of plus 174 to Gabriel Bonfim minus 213. Honestly, I think those are fair. I think that makes sense to me. This one I wouldn't mind hitting, but I still don't know exactly what I'm going to be doing with this card. Regardless, guys, starting off the card with a banger. Now, guys, let's continue on up the card over to Angela Overkill Hill taking on Ketlen Souza. Ketlen Souza's toughy because I don't exactly know what to think about her because she came onto the scene. We were like, okay, you know what? She lost to Karini Silva. It's a fraud check right away, but then she bounced back with a win against Marnik Man, which honestly meant nothing because Marnik Man is one of the worst fighters in the history of the sport. And then she bounced back with an incredible win over Yasmin Yurugui, and that was a huge upset, I'm pretty sure. But in this fight, man, she just looked on. She looked strong. She snagged that choke up. She snagged that up like a viper, dude. Like, Ketlen Souza left me with that performance against a high-level fighter in Yasmin Yurugui, and I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe we were just a little bit underrating her. But as for her style, she is a good Muay Thai striker with power for the division. She really tries to hurt you in there, and she has a good clinch game in for the division. She also has pretty decent power. She has underrated and sneaky Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but she can be taken down, and she can suffer against leg kicks. Angela Hill, on the other hand, not a ton to break down with Angela Hill. She's an all-round fighter who is decent, but not great anywhere. There's nowhere where Angela Hill actually shines. Something that is very important to note is that Ketlen Souza is in her prime at 29 years old, and Angela Hill is 40 years old now. Angela Hill coming off of the loss of Tabitha Ritchie, but Tabitha Ritchie is a top contender. Guys, I always get a little bit of flack on my videos over here when I talk about Angela Hill. I don't get the hype. I do not think she's good. I think she's 17-14, and I think she fights like she's 17-14, and she fights against very inconsistent competition with inconsistent performances, which is weird because she can have the wins over great fighters and then lose to some fighters where I'm like, how the hell could you possibly lose that fight? Angela Hill is starting to become kind of a Cody Brundage for me when it comes to betting, because I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. Somehow she can pull it off, but when you look at these fighters and go, okay, Ketlen Souza's probably the better fighter. I'm not saying Ketlen Souza is any world killer, but I look at her and go, you know what? She's probably better inside the clinch. She is probably better than BJJ. If Angela Hill wants to take her down, I can see her having problems. I can see Ketlen Souza being stronger, but sometimes Angela Hill just pulls it off. In saying that, I'm going to be picking Ketlen Souza. I think she is the better fighter. I think she's going to be the stronger fighter, and I think she has more strengths than Angela Hill at 40 years old. I'm going to be picking Ketlen Souza. It is a confident pick of mine, but this should not be a confident pick of mine because, like I said, Angela Hill just sometimes gets it done. In saying that, though, I would also, I don't really care who wins this fight, but I'd like to see Ketlen Souza get the job done. Let's see what OddsJam has to say over here. And here we go. Angela Hill sitting at a favorite again. I don't get the hype, guys. I don't get the hype. Look at her record. She fights like it. I receive pushback every single time that I talk about Angela Hill, man, so I'm ready to hear it. I don't think she's a good fighter. All right, guys, let's move on to the next fight, and this one is very interesting in my opinion. So we have Jared Flash Gordon taking on Cal Fernandes. Let's talk about Jared Gordon because I'm not on the Jared Gordon train, okay, but I don't know about, I feel like a lot of people shared my opinion, but now I'm ready to say that we have all been very vastly underrating this guy, okay? Jared Gordon is a good volume striker with decent combinations, with a decent wrestling game to back that up. Now, when looking at his performances, okay, and looking at his record, it's very, very important to note we have the no contest over here, which was just unfortunate clash heads with Bobby Green. Bobby Green likely and seemingly did that on purpose to finish him. He absolutely won this Paddy Pillman fight. It was a 100% robbery, and he absolutely won this Nasrat Hakparas fight. It was a robbery, okay? So, his record should be green here. We shouldn't have the headbutt, and we shouldn't have the losses. His record should be green, and he has been having good performances, okay? Now, after the Nasrat Hakparas fight, because I believe that Nasrat Hakparas is an improving fighter, and I think he's a very good fighter, I officially think that it's time to stop underrating Jared Gordon. He is a very, very tough guy, okay? I have said that he's a subpar fighter in the past, and, honestly, I still, my brain kind of thinks that a little bit, but the problem is, I've seen enough from him against good competition. His last fight was a war, but he should have won it. He beat Paddy Pillman. Look what Paddy Pillman's doing. He's a good fighter, okay? But he's taking on Cal Fernandes, and Cal Fernandes seems to have a decently promising future ahead of him. He's a striker with good movement. He's decently creative. He has a ground game, but he does prefer to fight more of a technical striking match. The problem with Cal Fernandes is we haven't seen him against anybody of significance. I was watching this dude over in the LFA a long time ago, and he's looked good. He's had some good performances, but the problem is he entered the UFC, got a split decision loss against Mark Diakasi, and then Muhammad Yahya, which, what are we going to say about that, for your one of your first UFC fights? Jared Gordon has faced better competition and performed better against better competition. This is a toughie, okay, because my gut wants to say Cal Fernandes. You know what? He's younger. He is probably hungrier. We just haven't seen him to the level of anybody that Jared Gordon has fought yet. I definitely wouldn't be betting on this fight, okay? I definitely would not be betting on this fight. I'm going to go with Jared Gordon. I'm not sure about it, but I'm going to go with Jared Gordon, guys. I think it's going to be a close fight. I think it's going to be a tough fight, but I'm going to pick Jared Gordon, the guy who it's time to stop underrating. Now, unfortunately, at the time of recording this video, I don't have any odds for you, so let's continue on. Now, guys, let's continue on up the card. Another fight that I am personally very, very excited for. Rafael Estevam taking on Jesus Aguilar. This is a very, very good and exciting fight against two guys that have a huge amount of potential in the division, okay? Both guys are still fairly green. Rafael Estevam coming in after his big win over Charles Johnson, which was An incredible performance against an incredible opponent, I will say. Jesus Aguilar, on the other hand, we've seen a little bit more from, but he's looked pretty good since he came into the UFC. His only loss being to Tetsuro Taira, but that loss has aged incredibly well. So, all right, let's talk about Rafael Estevam. He is a high-pressure striker and grappler who wants to get close, and this dude just wants to come in and take your head off. Either that or get a takedown and destroy you there. He has great takedowns, he has great control and decent submissions. He also has some very sneaky throws. The only thing that is not so great about Rafael Estevam is that he can fade as the fight goes on, but that is in high-pressure wars, and that's something that we have seen, especially with the Charles Johnson fight. And you know what? I'll stop right now and talk about this Charles Johnson fight, because I think when you get a win and you really bring it to Charles Johnson, I think that really says something about your career, because Charles Johnson is looking fantastic. He's had a lot of really close fights, he's had a lot of really tough fights, and he is a very capable fighter, okay? He did a great job in this fight with the takedowns and the control, and he was able to control Johnson more than most people, which in my opinion is saying something. Unfortunately, Johnson was still able to fight him off, and when he went for some submissions, like he had some sneaky submissions, but wasn't able to really get the job done. The problem is, and this is where I was talking about, like, you know what, he could fade as the fight possibly goes on. In the third, when Johnson ended up turning it on and ended up needing a finish, he almost folded. Almost folded. If that fight would have kept going, he would have gotten finished for sure, okay? In saying that, though, great performance, great career beforehand. He's 12-0. He's undefeated. He has a promising future. Jesus Aguilar, on the other hand, he's a good grappler with nice submissions. Particularly, he does have a very good guillotine choke. I know we were just making fun of Gabriel Bonfim in his guillotine choke, but he does have a very sneaky guillotine choke, okay? On the feet, he can be wild, but he's absolutely nobody to sleep on in that department. He is also a capable striker in himself. Like I said, after losing to Tetsuro Taira in his UFC debut, he's gone on to have a pretty good career so far, and it's against opponents like none of them stack up to the win and the fight that we've seen with Rafael Estevam and Charles Johnson, but little bit of a gut feeling on this one, guys. I think Aguilar is going to get the job done. I just think he's going to do it. I think he's going to do it. It's tough. It's tough because when you have these gut feelings, I have nothing to back up what I was saying, because I think that Rafael Estevam is actually a little bit of a better fighter, but I like his chances in the grappling department. I think that he can contest with Rafael Estevam there, and I think that he can really bring the fight. And this dude, Jesus Aguilar, is just a really tough guy, okay? It's a tough fight. It's a low confidence pick, but I'm going to edge towards Jesus Aguilar to get the win over here. I'm interested in what the odds are, and I would like to see Aguilar get the job done, because I would like to call that fight, okay? Let's see what Rafael Estevam is sitting at a minus 330 favorite. I think it's a little steep personally, but I do understand. I understand the hype behind him. He's looked really clean so far. I'm excited for this fight. Very excited. This card, guys, is great. Now, guys, let's move on over to the heavyweight division. We have Johnny Walker's brother, Valter Walker, taking on Dontel Mays. This has, I have no idea what to think, all over it, okay? Valter Walker, strong heavyweight with decent wrestling, but that seems to be it. He also has less than a round's worth of cardio, and we're unsure if he has improved on that, okay? Dontel Mays, though, Lord Kong, one of the most inconsistent fighters we have ever seen, okay? He's a low-volume striker with super heavy hands. He is a KO or a bus fighter. That's typically the Dontel Mays fight, but recently, Dontel Mays has been showing up, and Dontel Mays has actually been throwing punches again. If he does that, then he performs a little bit better, okay? And he tried that, okay? He tried that against the Caio Machado, but then he also tried that against Shamil Gaziev, Shamil the Blob Gaziev, one of the toughest and one of the greatest fighters to ever grace our sport, okay? But to be honest with you, he did try against Gaziev, but he lost. He was just too big. He was too heavy. He was wrestling like Dontel Mays. I think that he is, I don't know if improving is the right word to use, because I don't necessarily think that he's improving, but I do think that he is a little bit more hungry. I think he wants to stay in the UFC, and I think it's showing, okay? Valter Walker, though, here's the problem, okay? We've seen that horrible performance against Lucas Brzeski, we've seen it. We haven't seen much more because he had a fight against Junior Tafa after that, and that was just a flat-out weird stoppage. Walker ended up getting Tafa in a leg lock, Tafa screamed, and the fight was stopped. What would have probably happened in this fight is that Tafa would have had his leg been broken. But other than that, this is why it's tough to talk about, right? Because he was getting pieced up on the feet, and he ended up finding a takedown. But the problem is, Junior Tafa has beyond zero grappling game, so he ended up looking okay. I don't know what to think of Valter Walker at all, okay? But in saying that, he's a huge guy. He's a huge guy. I know Dontel Mays is big too, but Dontel Mays can be taken down. Is Valter Walker going to come out and try to take him down? Probably. Does Dontel Mays have good takedown defense? No. I'm going to assume, as much as I don't want to pick a guy who has as much of a cardio issue as Valter Walker and as much questions I have about his heart, his skill set, everything, because we haven't seen anything from this guy, okay? We just had a huge hole in his game. We don't know if it's fixed. I think he's still going to get the takedown, and I think that he's going to be able to control Dontel Mays, and I think that he's going to find, potentially, a submission. I'm going to be picking Valter Walker to win this fight, plus Dontel Mays. You never know what you're getting with the guy. Look at his record, 11-7, loss, win, loss, win, loss, win, but that's a Dontel Mays way. I think this is a low-level heavyweight fight. This is a very low-confidence pick of mine, but I am going to be picking Valter Walker to get the win. I'm actually excited for that fight as well. And I don't know. I don't really care who wins. Now, maybe Valter Walker. It'd be more fun to see him go through the heavyweight division, okay? Let's see. Valter Walker is sitting at a minus 172 favorite. I get that. There's just no hype beyond Valter Walker or Dontel Mays. It should be a good scrap, man. It should be fun to watch while it lasts. All right, guys, let's continue on to another matchup between two really, really hot prospects. I wouldn't say like incredibly hot, but like they're going to be fun to watch, okay? We have Vince Morales taking on Elijah Smith, making his UFC debut, okay? Vince Morales, he's a good boxer and a decent striker overall. He has great heart. He has great pressure. He has great power. He can fade in fights, is going to be one of the reasons why it's going to be a little bit of an interesting matchup, because Elijah Smith might have that same issue, okay? He can fade in fights, and sometimes he can get caught while hungry chasing that KO. We finally see him make his debut in the UFC, but it was against Taylor Lapilus, and that was a extremely, extremely tough fight to get for your UFC debut. I don't hold that loss and go, okay, that was a fraud check. I'm willing to hear him out. I can't wait to see more from him, but in saying that, he's taking on Elijah Smith, okay? And it's a little bit difficult to gauge his career because he hasn't fought anybody before we ended up seeing him on the Contender Series. On the Contender Series, it is important to note that he did take this fight on short notice, okay? He was fighting the perfect fight for the first round and a half, and he looked absolutely fantastic, but at the end of the second round, he faded, and then he really, really struggled. I believe if he ends up fixing that issue, but it might not even be an issue. That's the case, okay? It might not be an issue because he did take that Dana White's Contender Series fight on short notice, and he still looked fantastic. So, it's just something to keep in mind. Other than that, he is a well-rounded fighter with boxing. He has really nice hand speed. He uses his range well. He has good fundamentals. He has sneaky takedowns and a decent ground game to back all of that up, okay? I'm not ready to get on board with the Elijah Smith train over here. I'm not ready. I'm going to be picking Vince Morales to get the job done. I know that he ended up just losing to Taylor Lapilus, but he has the UFC experience there. He has a lot more fights. I know he is exiting his prime, but at least we know what we can kind of get from him. Like, we can get a good boxer, we can get like a decent striker. He can while he can overextend at times, he can get sucked into a war. He comes in with very ill intent. And on the other hand, Elijah Smith is only 22 years old. He's still very green, has a few fights. He's just entering the UFC, but I need to see a little bit more from him. I'm going to lean towards in a low confidence pick over to Vince Morales to get the job done. Let's take a look at what Odds Gym has to say about it. Elijah Smith. Oh, I'm picking some underdogs today, guys. I'm picking some underdogs. Elijah Smith sitting at a minus 229 favorite. I'm not seeing the hype personally. I'm not seeing the hype. But guys, can't wait to watch that fight. Like, this whole card, guys, is so good. All right, let's move on to the absolute banger of the card, the People's main event. We have Julia Avila taking on Jacqueline Cavalcanti. Great fight. Amazing fight. Can't wait to watch this, okay? Raging Panda. I forgot that was her nickname. I don't even remember if I knew that was her nickname, but you get the point. Strange, okay? I truthfully don't mean to be disrespectful when I talk about UFC fighters, because I know they're doing something so respectable, and I know that they are literally putting their life on the line to probably provide for their families, okay, and change their lives. But the problem is, I have nothing good to say about Julia Avila. And I'm not saying that to meme. Honestly, like, I'm not saying that to meme. I don't mean to be disrespectful, okay? She's an aggressive brawler with a supposedly great BJJ game, but from what we've seen, she is one of the worst fighters that we've ever seen. She can't do anything great, okay? She's 36 years old. She doesn't look good, and take a look at these opponents, okay? Anything of substance there? No. Okay? I bet on her against Miesha Tate. Miesha Tate's that bad. She lost to Miesha Tate. And that's not me being salty because I lost money on that fight. Nobody should be losing to Miesha Tate. Julia Avila lost to Miesha Tate, and She let Misha take her down. She did absolutely nothing from the bottom. Like, it was a beyond horrible performance. And she is a beyond horrible fighter. On the other side of the coin, we have Jacqueline Cavalcanti, who's a technical striker. She has good movement. She has good front kicks. She has good cardio. She has good flow. She's never really still. She's always moving around that octagon, and she's nowhere, but that's the problem. She's nowhere near being dangerous as a fighter, okay? Sometimes she hits shots. It looks like she has decent power, but on the other side of the coin, like, I don't know, man. She's not a dangerous fighter herself, but she does have good technical striking, okay? I've been watching her since she had her debut over in the LFA, and then she came into the UFC, and she's been looking pretty good so far. Pretty good against, like, competition. It's the division, man. It's the 135 division. There's no talent over there. They're all Julia Villas, man. And then when you have a fighter who is, like, has some technical ability, like Jacqueline Cavalcanti, she's going to destroy Julia Villa. This is my most confident pick on the card. I am picking the Nightmare to get the job done. I don't care, like, who could be on the other side of the coin. They're beating Julia Villa. I can't believe she has any wins in her career. I'm picking Jacqueline Cavalcanti to get the win. She's probably going to dance around her. Nothing else is going to happen. She's going to pick her apart. Let's take a look at what Odds Gym has to say. Julia Villa sitting at a minus 369 favorite. It should be minus 1,200. We have Bo Nickel having those odds, but not any fighter against Julia Villa. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. Now, guys, before we move on to the main card, let me stop you for just a second. As you guys know, I talk a lot about betting on this channel. If you'd like to either support the channel or seeing exactly where I'm putting my money where my mouth is, you can check out the channel membership in the pinned comment description down below or right next to the subscribe button. Every single Thursday, Friday, or Saturday morning, I will be posting in a community members post and a members only video what exactly I am doing with my money, what fighters that I'm going to be betting on. I'm going to be explaining why. So again, if you would like to either support the channel or again, seeing exactly what I'm doing with my money, then check out the channel membership. It is very cheap compared to other channels. Also, we do have Odds Jam as a partner on the channel. If you'd like to sign up to Odds Jam, fantastic. If you are a serious sports bettor with multiple sports books, you can check out my link in the description, pinned comment down below. Using code Clenbat, you can get a discount when you sign up. With that being said, guys, thank you for listening. Let's get into the main card. Let's continue on up the card, guys. We have Rodolfo Vieira taking on Andre Petroski. This is a difficult fight to predict, in my opinion, okay? You have Rodolfo Vieira, who's a BJJ fighter with fast and pretty decent hands to back up that grappling game. He has good takedowns, he has great control, he has great patience, and great submissions. At times, he has faded in fights before. He's coming off of 2 really nice wins. He's had a little bit of a rocky career since his UFC, but this is the problem, right? The Armin Petrosian win, it's okay, but then he also got a win against Cody Brundage, so you could really look at it like loss, win, but he has been a very inactive fighter. Andre Petroski, on the other hand, has been a very active fighter, okay? And he's been changing up the game a little bit. He's on a 2-fight win streak. He's been looking okay. He's a strong wrestler with powerful but sloppy hands. He also has a BJJ game to wrap up that entire skill set that he has. He's very good at pressuring, but there are times where he just misses. He ends up overextending in his shots. On the ground, though, this dude absolutely 100% makes you hurt. Grinding his with the, like, just destroying you with his elbows, making you hurt. Short, solid shots with the ground and pound. Something else to know about Andre Petroski is he has a huge problem listening to his corner. His corner can give him some advice, and he'll look like he's listening, but then he just won't implement anything. But the other thing that I want to say about Andre Petroski is after his loss against Jacob Malkoun, he ended up saying that he is going to start playing things safe in his fights. And what he has done is played it as safe as possible, both against Josh Fremd and against Dylan Budka. He did what he needed to do to get the win, and he had a couple solid performances, okay? So because we've seen this twice, I think it's safe to say that Andre Petroski is going to take this approach to his fights moving forward. He's probably going to shoot for some takedowns, get some control, land those really, really short elbows, fight to his strengths, and not get sucked into any, like, wild, sloppy brawl. He's done a good job doing that so far, and I have no reason to believe that he's going to stray away from that, okay? In saying that, though, I haven't been overly impressed from what I've seen with Andre Petroski. Rodolfo Vieira seems like a little bit like, this is a tough fight to pick, man. This is a really, really tough fight to pick. When's the last time Rodolfo Vieira fought? Like, he hasn't been active. 11 months ago, 1 year ago. Andre Petroski, he's been very active. He's fought better opponents. I was going into this thinking that I was going to pick Rodolfo Vieira. Maybe he'd be a little bit more dangerous, but I'm kind of swaying my pick over here. I'm going to pick Andre Petroski. He's game planning. He's playing the fight safe. So if there's a strength that he has, or if there's a certain technique that he sees, he's going to go for it. I like the activity that we've seen from him. Very low confidence pick on this one as well, guys, but I am going to pick Andre Petroski to get the win. I would imagine Rodolfo Vieira is the favorite in this fight, and I was right. Minus 217 sitting at Rodolfo Vieira right now. I'm picking a lot of underdogs. Maybe this card is going to go horrible for me. Regardless, guys, I would like to see Andre Petroski get the job done. I saw a lot of fans really hating on him after his last couple of performances, but he's doing what he needs to do to get the job done, and I have nothing but respect for that. I think he's getting a little bit of unnecessary hate, so I'm going to cheer for him. I hope he gets the job done. All right, guys, let's keep moving. Let's keep moving up the card. We have Edmen Shahbazyan taking on Dylan Budka. I never know what to think about an Edmen Shahbazyan fight, man. Like, this dude is wildly inconsistent, okay? Edmen Shahbazyan, he's a good all-around fighter. When he is moving forward, he can be quite explosive, but he lacks defense, especially against takedowns and ground control. And we've also seen Edmen Shahbazyan have some heart issues. We've also seen Edmen Shahbazyan have some cardio issues. He's one of those guys that if he just fixed his cardio and if he just like worked on his conditioning and nothing else, like he could be really one of the greats. But I guess you also can't teach heart right. I don't know. He just doesn't always get the job done, man. Like, sometimes he wins, sometimes he loses. The 13-5 record shows, and he has taken on some good performances. Like in his last fight, it was only 4 months ago. It was pretty slow pace at the beginning. He swarmed Gerald. He almost got the finish. He ended up looking good, but then he got submitted, and that's the Edmen Shahbazyan way, right? Dylan Budka, on the other hand, unfortunately, he has been struggling to find that first win in the UFC. He got the win on the Contender Series, but then, and I want to say that he got fed some really good opponents coming into the UFC, but the problem is, he has offered very little resistance in both of these fights, and he has not looked good. Okay? Anyways, Dylan Budka. He is a patient grappler with good takedowns, and he isn't afraid to shoot from anywhere. On the feet, he runs forward, which sometimes works out for him, sometimes doesn't work out for him. Sometimes, though, and this is very important to note when you're talking about Dylan Budka, is when he wrestles, he doesn't throw shots, okay? And we saw this in the Cesar Almeida fight, okay? Like, he ended up using some good pressure, he ended up getting some takedowns, but he landed, like, 0, 1, or 2 shots. That type of stuff can get rounds taken away from him. He is doing very, very little damage with his grappling, and that's very important to note. He's not like Edmen Shahbazyan, who actually will start throwing hands. Like, I want to pick Edmen Shahbazyan. I flat out think he's the better fighter. I just do, okay? But I can't trust him anymore. But they're really, really working to get Edmen Shahbazyan to win over here because Dylan Budka has not offered anything in the UFC yet. I'm going to pick Edmen Shahbazyan. Again, we're rocking with a low confidence pick over here because it's Edmen Shahbazyan. All of a sudden, he could be beating up Dylan Budka for 2 rounds, and then, oh my god, Edmen Shahbazyan got finished. Oh my god, crazy highlight by Dylan Budka right there. In saying that Edmen Shahbazyan is a better fighter technically, and I would imagine that he can do whatever he wants to Dylan Budka. I'm picking Edmen Shahbazyan to get the win. I'd like to see him get the win. I feel bad for him too, man, just like we were talking about earlier. I feel bad for him. Like, he's a great fighter, but people just clown on him, okay? Edmen Shahbazyan sitting at a massive favorite. Anyone with the inconsistency of Edmen Shahbazyan should not be this big of a favorite, but I guess that just speaks volumes about the issues with Dylan Budka in his career so far. I'm picking Edmen Shahbazyan. I think he's going to get the job done, man. All right, guys, let's keep going up to another fight on the card, another fight that I'm very excited for. We have Jose Delgado taking on Conor Matthews, or as Conor McGregor would say, just Matthew. Decided to name him just Matthew. It's crazy the influence this guy has, but man, this is a fight against 2 guys that I'm excited to see how their careers go, but the problem is, like, we have one LFA fight over from, Jose Delgado, and there's not much else before that. He's taking on fighters that are nothing of significance, and Conor Matthews, you see a little bit more of the same. He had the shot against Francis Marshall in the Contender Series a while ago, came back, got a win, but then again, still nothing to write home about. Got the win of the Contender Series the second time, and then unfortunately lost to Dennis Bazooka in the, you know what, I'll talk about this one, because this is a shame that he lost this fight. It's an absolute shame because he was fighting well. His pressure, his movement, his striking, wrestling, everything looked good, okay? But, and don't get me wrong in saying this, he was a little bit behind in the fight, but it was a really good scrap, and he just ended up getting caught and finished in the last round, man. Like, he was having a pretty good performance. On the Contender Series, he showed his technical ability. He had ended up doing a good job, but we're diving a little bit too much in his record over here. Conor Matthews, he's one of those guys that trains out of New England Cartel. He's training with guys like Rob Font. He's training with guys like Calvin Kattar. He has some high-level people around him. He's a well-rounded and super technical fighter with very nice kickboxing, BJJ, movement, and pressure. The only thing that I have seen that's a little bit negative about Conor Matthews is he can be sucked into a scrap, and he is a little bit hittable. Jose Delgado, on the other hand, he's a well-rounded fighter. He has good accuracy on the feet, pretty good defense as well. He has nice submissions in his back pocket. He is seemingly a pretty capable fighter, but again, we only really have 2 performances over here to take a look at, and he ended up getting a finish in both of them. Don't get me wrong, he looked good. I'm just not ready to board the Delgado train. Connor Matthews, I think, has shown a little bit more promise, so I'm going to lean towards him to get the job done. I like what I've seen in his past couple performances. He showed that he really had the dog in him against Dennis Bazooka, and I thought it was a good fight, man. I thought it was a good fight. I like what I've seen from him so far. I can't tell yet if he's like really improving, but so far, I'm going to go with Connor Matthews. I think it's going to be a good fight. I think that both of these guys have potential, but I am going to lean towards Connor Matthews in this bout. Now, this is the only other fight on the card that does not have betting odds at the time of recording this video. Again, guys, I'm recording this very early. I'm just scheduling it until after the recent UFC card that you've seen, but I'm going to go with Connor Matthews. I'd like to see him get the job done as well. Now, guys, let's continue on over to the featured fight on the card. We have, this is the featured fight on the card. Okay, we have Ismail Bonfim versus Nazim Sadikov. This is another tough one because it's 2 guys that I've kind of lost a little bit of hope in, okay? Ismail Bonfim, he's a crazy striker with not a ton of technique. He wants to come forward, he wants to throw hands, and he wants to knock you clean out. He can be technical, though, both offensively and defensively. He just doesn't necessarily always show it, okay? Against Benoit Saint-Denis, we finally saw he had a very disappointing performance. He just ate kicks, tried to brawl, and he was even taunting, and I hate when fighters do that, man. I hate when fighters do that once they start losing. They start taunting instead of adjusting. Regardless, didn't look so good there, and then he fought Vince Pichel, and this is where I completely lost hope in Ismail Bonfim. He won, and he got the better of most exchanges, but he had a competitive fight with a washed 41-year-old fighter, okay? On the other hand, we have Nazim Sadikov, okay? He is a good kickboxer with nice speed, he has nice power, he has nice pressure, he has very nice movement, and he isn't afraid to get flashy with his strikes. He looks good when he fights, okay? But the problem is we finally saw him against a very... But the thing is, he also took on Evan Elder, which was... That's a tough one to break down, okay? But Terrence McKinney, we've seen Terrence McKinney have okay performances, but the problem is, like the Vyacheslav-Borshev fight, a little bit of a step up in competition, okay? But in this fight, I know he got the win, but it's important to note that he lost rounds 1 and 3 of this fight very bad. The only reason that this ended up being a draw is because he ended up getting a 10-8, or likely getting a 10-8 in the second round, is where he really clipped Vyacheslav-Borshev. But other than that, that's what saved him. He didn't look good in this performance, okay? I didn't like his groundwork. He had his opponent completely rocked and not knowing where he was, but he was unable to, establish any sort of dominant position over there. But I know I'm saying a lot of negatives there, but just don't take this the wrong way. It was still a tough fight, and he hung in there. It's just, for most of the fight, he was outworked most of the time. So we've seen these guys against a little bit better competition, and we've seen them underperform. But hey, you know what? That could be a learning experience as well. Here's the biggest takeaway, though, okay? I believe that I overhyped Nazim Sadikov for myself. Watching MMA, I thought he was better than I thought he was, but I still think he's a good fighter. Ismail Bonfim, I've just lost hope in. For that reason, I'm going to pick Nazim Sadikov to get the job done. He is probably going to... But the problem is, even if they were to sit down and they were to have just a flat-out striking match, Ismail Bonfim is capable of having a very nice technical performance, but he doesn't just always do that. I didn't like his last performance. Nazim Sadikov took up a fight in competition, a fight up in competition compared to Ismail Bonfim. I'm going to pick him to get the job done. Tough fight to call, but I'm going to pick Nazim Sadikov, and I'd like to see Ismail Bonfim get back in the win column, man, but both guys, it's a very important fight for both of them, and it's sad that, somebody has to lose this fight, okay? Ismail Bonfim is sitting, I picked another underdog. Ooh, this card can go either really, really good or really bad for me, okay? Ismail Bonfim is sitting at a minus 142 favorite over here. I get that. It's kind of leaning towards a pick'em. That makes total sense. Don't get me wrong. Before we move on to the co-main event and the main event, though, guys, let me stop you for just one more second over here. As you might know, I am your guy with too many YouTube channels. We don't just make MMA content over here. We make gaming content. We make variety commentary content. We make TV show review content, movie review content. You can check out any other channel in the link tree in the description down below, or you can find actual links to those channels in the description down below as well. Thank you very much for listening, and I would love to see any of you over at the other channels. I know we have a couple familiar faces over on the gaming channel as well, so that's nice to see. I just appreciate you guys being here. If you're interested in more content, I am here to entertain. We have lots of daily uploads. Let's get into the fights, guys. All right, guys, let's move on to the co-main event of the evening. A very, very fun fight. We have Cavalcanti taking on Youssef Zalal, a guy who has lost all of the hype in the world versus a guy who's gaining all of the hype in the world, okay? Calvin Kattar. Let's start with Calvin Kattar. Excuse me, guys, just for a moment over there. Sorry, my baby's sleeping right now. The camera was just moving a little bit. Regardless, Calvin Kattar, he is a pretty well just a boxer, and he's decent when it comes to the rest of the field of MMA. He's a good striker. He has good cardio. He's very durable. He has a ton of heart. He also mixes in some very, very damaging and well-timed elbows when people get in close to him. So it's not like he's not just a pure boxer. He is an MMA fighter, but excuse me, boxing is definitely where he excels. Now, I want to talk about Calvin Kattar's record for a second because people have been completely off the Calvin Kattar train. I'm not off of it yet, but I do think that Calvin Kattar is on the decline. I don't know what it is. I don't know if he made his money. I don't know if the motivation's gone. I don't know if it's him almost being 37 years old. He's fighting in a very competitive and a very tough division. Plus, he has a lot of miles on his body. He's been in there with a lot of really, really tough fights, tough fighters, and a lot of wars. There's a variety of reasons why Calvin Kattar could be underperforming, okay? Let's talk about his fights. Obviously, back in 2021, we had the horrible destruction, life-changing damage that Max Holloway dealt to him. Bounced back, got a win over Giga Chikadze. He lost a split decision to Josh Emmett. Lost a split decision. He absolutely won this fight. That was a ridiculous split decision. Arnold Allen, not much to take away from there. He ended up getting injured. And then he fought Aljamain Sterling, which he got held for 3 rounds, and he couldn't do anything to stop Sterling. Now, I think it's about time that we say, and I know that some people in the comments will be like, well, I've always thought Aljamain Sterling was great. I wasn't one of those people. I thought that Aljamain Sterling just ended up getting by in a lot of fights. He is a very, very strong man who can hold people, okay? And I'm not saying that like as a dig. I know a lot of people say that as a dig, but he held Calvin Kattar, and he's proved that he can hold a lot more people than just Calvin Kattar. So is it really anything to like look at and go, wow, Calvin Kattar, you're washed? I'm not ready to say that. If he loses this fight, perhaps, okay, because he is fighting down the ranks a little bit. Youssef Zalal, on the other hand, he has put together a vastly, vastly improved fighter in a beautiful win streak. He's 16-5 now since he came back into the UFC. Billy Quarantillo, domination. Jarno Aarons, got a quit submission. Jack Shore, shined. This dude is looking fantastic. He's an all-round fighter. He has low volume, picks his shots. He has very good defense and always has great fight IQ. Now, on this new UFC run that he's here, and you can just tell when he speaks from the heart, man, this dude is very, very motivated to become a UFC champion, and he wants to change his life becoming a UFC champion, and it shows. He's improving from fight to fight, and I think he really shined against Jack Shore. The striking, at the beginning, it was a little bit back and forth. He had some really good like moments in there, but he ended up picking it up as time's gone on, and then he ended up landing an amazing knee and then getting a submission behind that. He even out-grappled Jack Shore, and that's something to say. He is improving from fight to fight. I like Calvin Kattar, man, but at this point in his career right now, again, I'm not ready to count him out completely, and I think this could very well be a tough fight. I just love the role that Youssef Zalal's been on. He's improving. Every single time that we see him, he's hungrier than ever. He's one of those guys that's like, you look at him and you're like, yep, that dude is hungry for a win over here. This is a huge opportunity for him. He's training so hard. I like what I've seen from him so far, and I am going to pick Youssef Zalal. Plus, he will have more avenues to victory, and I don't know, he doesn't necessarily have to stand and box with Calvin Kattar. In saying that, I know already that Youssef Zalal is probably going to be a giant favorite. I don't think it should be that bad. I don't even know if I'm going to want to bet on this fight, but I am going to be picking Youssef Zalal to get the job done. I'm just saying Calvin Kattar, I'm not ready to call him washed, okay? And you can see Youssef Zalal sitting at a minus 402 favorite over there. And for this fight, it's so tough because I really like both guys. I love Youssef Zalal and watching his motivation. I love watching him improve. I love watching him perform, okay? But Calvin Kattar, man, he's always been fun to watch too, and people are counting him out, and I always really respected Calvin Kattar as well. I like the dude. I don't want to see either of them lose. It's a shame that somebody has to lose this fight, in my opinion. I like both guys. I don't want to see either one lose, but I am going to be picking Youssef Zalal to get the job done. Now, guys, let's move on over to the main event. We have Jared Cannonier taking on Robocop Gregory Rodrigues. There's a lot of really tough fights to pick on this card, man. So, Jared Cannonier. We all know Jared Cannonier at this point in his career. Kill a gorilla. He's a very powerful striker who does a great job keeping things at his own pace, picking his shots. Jared Cannonier has had a little bit of a rocky road recently. He's had a few fights since 2022. After the Israel Adesanya loss, which was a very underwhelming performance, he had a good fight against Sean Strickland, which I personally thought Sean Strickland won. The Marvin Vettori win was an absolute destruction. And then the Nassourdine Imavov loss, yeah, you know what? He lost by KO, okay? He did a great job here, slowing down the pace, and he was winning big time. And this did age very well because he was having his moments against Nassourdine Imavov. He ended up just getting caught. While this was a controversial stoppage, he would have been finished anyways. Then he ended up taking on Kyle Braujo, and this fight was a short notice take by Jared Cannonier. In this fight, like, he had an okay performance, just Kaue did better. And I think that Khaos is a very capable fighter. And I think Khaos is just going to continue on up the ranks. And I think Khaos is going to become a champion. So it's tough to gauge where Jared Cannonier is in his career. He's 40 years old. He's almost 41. The day's going to come where we watch Jared Cannonier and we're like, oh, he's old. Time to retire Jared Cannonier. But he's not there yet. He hasn't shown that yet. So I'm going to assume that that's not the case right now. Gregory Rodrigues, on the other hand, he's a well-rounded fighter with really solid power. He shines when he's swinging away in an absolutely brutal fight. He also has a very good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game. He does now have an issue above his eye with getting cut like really, really bad. So if he gets punched there and he starts gushing blood, then that could obviously sway the judges because damage over everything, right? He's on a little bit of a roll as well. After the loss over against Bruno Ferreira, he went on a 3-fight win streak and he's been like not the most active, but we've seen him and we see why he's taking some time off because he ended up like some of them he got dragged into some wars. Like Dennis Tululin, he ended up getting a quick KO, but the Brad Tavares one was like really, really chaotic but technical at the same time. Like it was really fun over there. He ended up finishing Brad in the third. And then the Christian Leroy Duncan win is a fight that I was very impressed with because I think that Christian Leroy Duncan is also a very capable fighter. This was a classic RoboCop performance. It wasn't clean, but he did the job and he ended up getting the win. So why is this a tough fight? It's because Jared Cannonier is going to want to come in and Jared Cannonier is going to want to slow down the pace, keep it boxing heavy. He's going to want to just pick at you shot for shot and get the one up there. Gregory Rodrigues is going to shine when Gregory Rodrigues comes in and makes the whole thing chaos. So who's going to have success in that field? I want to say that Jared Cannonier will be able to do that. He's done it against high-level fighters, but RoboCop is on a roll himself. This is another really, really tough fight. I could also see Jared Cannonier absolutely jabbing that eye open and just have Gregory Rodrigues gush in blood. But I don't like that Jared Cannonier is almost 41 years old. Gregory Rodrigues is still in his prime, just exiting his prime. This is about a 50-50 fight, guys. I don't believe that you should be betting on this fight whatsoever. Oh, boy. I'm going to pick, I'm talking like 51-49 over here, guys. I could really see this fight going either way. Gun to my head, I'm picking Jared Cannonier to get the win. But no matter what, whether it's a round line, whether it's a finish, I do not believe you guys should be betting on this fight at all. I can see this one going either way. Plus, you have to worry about Jared Cannonier and the day where he ends up showing up looking his age. I'm going to very, very slightly lean towards Jared Cannonier just for the sake of the video, but this one could go either way. And I'd like to see Jared Cannonier win, man. I'd like to see him get another win. I don't want to see him go out on some losses. You can see, I picked another underdog. Oh, boy. Man, I'm interested to see what the results are going to be for this one, guys. Jared Cannonier is sitting at a plus 160 underdog. Gregory Rodrigues at, plus 155. And Gregory Rodrigues is sitting at a minus 186 favorite. Oh, boy. Regardless, guys, this card is going to be absolutely phenomenal, and I cannot wait to watch it. I would imagine that you feel the same way. Let me know what you think about all the fights down below. Thank you so much for watching, but the MMA content does not have to end there. Why don't you check out this video on screen right now? YouTube thinks that you will like this video the best if you enjoy the channel. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. Take care.